This episode of the SwitchCast is produced by Mark Buckles, our honored Patreon member, and Switch Knight.
Hey everybody, I'm KC.
And I'm JV.
And this is the SwitchCast, the podcast for the Nintendo Switch connoisseur. Connoisseur. And we are flying high this week. A lot of big things have been going on with the podcast this week, and we have a very big show lined up for you guys to enjoy with lots of reviews, some very interesting news, and a conclusion to a contest that we can't wait to read the entries for.
Oh, absolutely. Sun Worshipper has been really on the ball with all of these contests, and I am really glad that there's quite a bit of engagement there. Even if it's not necessarily official contests from us directly, our community has been so overwhelmingly positive and receptive to any events or anything that someone steps up and hosts. And I really love that.
I think it's been a very big snowball effect because, we started with just maybe some tournaments. We had a couple of these contests, and now they're just kind of become a thing. And you know what? The more things that community members can lead, that saves us a little more trouble because we want to do a million things each, right? But yeah. There's literally 3 people working on this podcast right now, so it's only a finite amount of it going to get done. So the more people, that's why I'm always asking people to help us with the tournaments, because the more people that just want to pitch in, then there's really no limit to how many of these things we could actually accomplish. So good on you, and good on the community for achieving two of the goals I was really pushing for, and I was really hoping you guys would cross these lines. We broke 1,000 members of our Facebook group.
Yes!
Yeah.
Oh, so good. I'm so proud of everyone for rallying and getting our numbers up there.
And it's been very active this last week. A lot of posts. People are a little more open to just post little questions or, you know what's funny? And I'm not like making fun of this person. I just love it when someone asks something very simple like, hey, is Splatoon 2 a good game to buy? Like, does anyone still play that? And like everyone just responds like, we're all playing it all the time. And the other big milestone, we broke 200 reviews on the App Store.
Yeah, that's huge too.
Boom. We kicked off a few other things this week. So I mentioned last week I was going to use that lens feature of Patreon. And I have been doing that for the last 3 or 4 days, about just uploading kind of like Twittery stuff, just pictures, a little caption here or there about stuff that's going on, stuff related to the podcast, just keeping up to date with what I've been playing. And the response has been really good. I'd say the majority of our Patreon members have been going there and checking them out. And actually, right before this show, I posted a bunch of 15-second videos, because I didn't know that's the max length actually you could post on there. They want to keep it like the Twitter of video feeds, apparently.
Right, short and succinct.
Yes. So I posted a bunch of little videos of my setup for the podcast and how I, what I do, what I prep, and just showing everyone where the magic happens, so to speak. So
right.
It's been pretty fun, and I'm digging it. I'm going to probably keep doing it, and especially as long as you guys keep checking it out, I will keep the feed going. And just so you know, anyone who's interested in seeing the lens feed and just following what we're doing behind the scenes of the podcast, the other 6 days of the week that you don't listen to us, you just have to become a Patreon member. As little, just $1 minimum, you have access to it. So it's really not that much if you want to check that out as bonus content for being a member.
It's just, a way for us to have an even bigger connection to our Patreon members. So
yes.
Thank you so much for checking that out.
Okay, so I am going away next week. I wanted to mention that, everybody. So, JV, you are going to have your own podcast next week, aren't you?
Oh my gosh, that's right. When was the last time that this happened?
When was my last vacation?
I don't remember, but I think the last time I had David on for Fire Emblem Warriors.
Oh,
that's correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, next week we'll be talking about another game in quite a bit of depth, and with we'll see if it's excitement or not. But
it's fortuitous that both times were weeks where a very big game came out that you were both really interested in. So
yeah. Make sure to time all of your vacations that way from now on, Casey.
I time vacations for big game releases. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
But before I go, I'm going to try to get in one last tournament before I head out. So this Saturday, if anyone's interested, 7 p.m., we're going to try to do a Bomberman tournament, Super Bomberman R. For anyone who wants to show up, I'll put the usual really quick SurveyMonkey application up tomorrow or today when this posts, and all you have to do, just your name, your Nintendo ID username. All right, a lot of people keep putting in their personal names or trying to put their Discord names. Just put your user ID for the your Nintendo member account, whatever the people see on their friends list, and your friend code. That's really all you have to do to apply, and then I'll make the brackets and I'll figure out how it all works out. But it'll probably be simple 4-player matches.
Oh yeah, I definitely bet organizing a Bomberman tournament is going to be much easier than organizing Splatoon. So,
yes. It's going to be fun because we haven't played it in a while, and we've been trying to get some good variety games because everyone keeps asking about Splatoon and Mario Kart, and I'm fine with doing those, but I want to kind of change it up here and there.
Yeah, I definitely want to hit up all of those OG Switch games and relive and breathe some new life into the multiplayer for them. So I think this Bomberman tournament's going to be fun.
Yeah. All right, so that is all the meta that I wanted to get through here. So sit back, or I guess you could be listening to this while jogging or something, but in either case, enjoy the rest of the show, and let's go into the game time.
Let's do it.
So, game time. We've been playing a few different games here, so we actually have 3 games, one that I've been putting off forever, and one that I can't wait to talk about.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Flinthook, that is the game that I got. It was funny because I didn't even know this. I forgot about it, actually. I was looking forward to this, and then I forgot about it, and I saw a tweet. So yeah, I reached out to Tribute Games. They gave me the code, and this is one of the best animated, I gotta say, really, one of the best, most animated games I've turned on with the Switch. And it just has this really cool, I describe it as a Saturday morning cartoon feel with this main character.
Yeah.
Because it's set in space, but it's like all space pirates. And the main character,
really?
Yeah, and the main character has a little bit of a space ghost feel because he has like this like cape that goes all over his face, like he's kind of like dressed like a ghost, and he has like a little ghost buddy and stuff like that.
Gotcha. I do feel like the art style fits your aesthetic quite well.
Yeah, but it's pretty. It's really smoothly animated.
Well, I'm looking at screenshots and videos of it, and
yeah.
I feel like there's so much detail to the backgrounds and foregrounds that the pixel density of the images are actually a lot higher. I like that this is a trend, and we're seeing a bunch of it, and it's an aesthetic that I can get behind.
But the gameplay itself actually manages to defy my expectations in a genre, because I am generally not a fan of anything with like random generated stages or roguelike elements to it. And this has both, but it weaves them all together into something that feels like a game that is more in my wheelhouse and just adds so many. It just does them so well, executes them so right that it just impresses me despite it being a genre that I don't like. So in this game, Flinthook, as I said, you're the space pirate, and you're hunting down these other space pirates, like, for bounties. I guess you're kind of a bounty hunter, but I haven't uncovered all the lore yet.
Okay.
And there is lore, and that's actually a little bit of the side thing in this. So when you pick, let's say, a bounty you're hunting for, you have to go to a bunch of random ships, and you break into them, and you have to go through a labyrinth of levels, of rooms, and they play out side-scrollery, action, platformy kind of gameplay, but your main abilities when you're in these ships are, okay, so you run, you shoot, And your main other thing is you have a grappling hook kind of thing that shoots out. It's a little anchor, and it grabs onto rings that are strewn about the stages, and you can kind of propel yourself with them, kind of like Batman does. You know, he shoots the grappling, right? But it's not like Indiana Jones. You can't just swing from things. You grab something, and it just slingshots you in that direction.
Right, so you can't hang from a hook. You have to just propel yourself. It's like a slingshot each time.
Exactly. And And it's really fun, and it's a little tricky to master, but it's really fun to fly around a room, realize you're flying into a spike trap on a wall, and then shoot another hook and pull you in the opposite direction, and you'll be flying all over the place sometimes.
And so it does look like that hook mechanic is almost the primary movement capability of this character.
I'd say you will travel just as much by hook as you do by crook or by walking.
Oh, that was pretty good. Not
Thank
bad.
you. But this, you will, I'd say it's almost 50-50, and a lot of the the rooms, rather, are designed that speed boost you get might be essential, or the fact that you could change direction with it. You do have another main power in that you do have a chrono belt that slows down time, and this is it's not a bullet time feature, because it's not like you can do anything faster. It's not like time slows down just for everything else. It slows down everything in the room.
Including yourself.
Right. Mostly as a utility to just get your bearings in a crazy situation and being like, okay, I just need another second to decide where to move or who to shoot or where to grapple. And there's a few other tricks in the rooms where there's certain barriers that can only be traversed in slow-mo time, things like that.
Yeah, I imagine something like that would really help with the precision jumping that's required.
Sometimes, especially when there's a lot of bullets flying around, and the difficulty does have a decent gradual flow to it, but before you know it, you are on some crazy rooms where there's just stuff flying everywhere. There's spike traps here. There's little sensors that'll shoot a laser if you cross them there. When you enter any of these rooms, you have to stop for a second and pay attention, because they are devious at times, and it just looks like it might look like it's just a simple room. I'm going to grapple across, but then you don't see that they've put these, maybe like a spinning blade here or an enemy floating around there. That's just
it's a trap.
Yeah, really, it is a trap, and it feels very piratey, because like even little things like you might not notice it. And I feel it's intentional, even though it frustrates the heck out of me. And I want to say I want them to change this, but it makes sense. Like, there's little laser sensors on some stages. And they're not, like, super obvious if you're not paying attention. But if you cross them, they'll shoot a laser at you after, like, a half second. So you have to know that's a spot you have to just fly through, and you can't stop. But if you're not paying attention and you look around first, it'll get you every time.
So how much of these types of elements are there? And since it is procedurally generated, how are you able to predict whether these traps are going to pop up in front of you?
Okay, so there's some interesting aspects. So in order to get to the your bounty, right? I said you have to beat a certain number of ships. Like the first bounty, you need to beat 3 ships and survive them all, and then you'll get to fight the boss. And then the next one, you have to beat 4 ships to get to him. But each of the ships, so when you pick a ship to invade, you'll usually have a choice of 3, and they'll have a difficulty rating, and then they'll have a random array of elements that will be prevalent in those places. Like, it'll tell you if this area has a lot of insect monsters, or this is a spike trap hell, like all these sorts of things, and you could pick ones based on your loadout, and I'll get to how you can load out your character later, and what maybe you just are fond of. Like, I hate spike traps in this. I never see them. I forget they're there, and I always step on them, and I get stabbed, and over and over again. So I always avoid anything that tells me that it's like a Blade crazy stage. But there are some things I'm better at, and I like, I'll pick those stages. There's also good things. They'll tell you that this ship might have a library in it, because you can collect various things in this game. Like, there's pages you can take from books to collect the lore of the game and read up on the background of, this bird mercenary that you capture in one level, or you can pick up relics. Some stages might have a room. They're just collectibles. They're just things that you might want to collect, not necessarily power-ups. Or maybe you're low on health and you want to go to the one that says it has like a cafeteria that you can like munch down on and regain some health.
Okay, that seems really helpful.
Yeah, and there's some really crazy like changes too. Like there's some of the stages might have like a fog that just is pervasive through all the stages, or one of them, sometimes you get one that has asphyxiation, where basically there's a time limit before the air runs out, and you start losing health if you don't beat the stage fast enough.
Okay. So the diversity of stages is actually pretty wide, and it doesn't feel like it gets repetitive over time?
That's the first thing I was super surprised by. I have not felt it's gotten super repetitive. In fact, I really would like to know how they designed this game, because sometimes I feel like maybe a room has the same layout, but there's so many elements that they mix and match in the rooms that it almost never feels like I've hit the same room twice. Like, I know this monster, but I've never fought this monster with this trap on the corner to dodge, and with this loadout that I brought.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly reassuring to hear that, because, a lot of procedurally generated games do have the problem of things feeling repetitive, just because of how procedural generated games can only do so many combinations of things.
Right. And what helps also is, so every time you beat a bounty and you move on to the next bounty, even though you're doing the same general thing of going into these randomly generated ships, they then will up the stakes. Now the background's a little different. Maybe, if you get a little different vibe, there's a new music track, and the music's pretty cool in this game too. It feels very, I want to say Blaster Mastery. Like, it has it has a really solid soundtrack, and it still carries that like piratey kind of feel, even though it's a super sci-fi situation here. And so each new bounty adds a little spice, but that's when they add maybe a new set of obstacles or upgraded versions of guys you fought before. And there's some actually pretty interesting bad guys you face, like some of the things, like I said, that are really good for mixing and matching. There's one villain that you'll fight in certain rooms that his only purpose is he puts a shield on other enemies that can't be broken until you kill him.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it's like, all right, usually these guys are no problem. I just shoot them a bunch of times. Oh, but now I have to get through them, and I can't kill them until I kill this dude floating in the corner somewhere. And that makes these otherwise dudes that were throwaway enemies now a real difficult thing to deal with. And it's just different. And there's so many, it just mix and matches so many of those things together that, yeah, like I said, it always feels like a new challenge, and they add new mechanics to it as you advance through the bounties. So some of the other little aspects, I mentioned there's the perks, or there's the loadouts.
Oh, right. I remember you said that.
So as you're beating these stages, and again, if you die on any of the stages before you fight the boss, or even if you die on a boss, your run's over, and you'll have to beat stages again before you get a shot at the boss, which can be frustrating.
Yeah, and that's pretty classic or pretty standard to roguelikes in general.
Right. But you do get certain currency for every ship that you beat that you can spend on unlocking perks. Things like, I want my bullets to go further. I want to run faster. I want my grappling hook to be longer. I want to build up more damage if I don't get hit, or if I grab more gold. And gold's a big thing in the game too, because not every room's just a bunch of enemies. You run into rooms that are, here's a merchant selling you food and items, or like I said, those other rooms where you find some rooms you find really weird stuff, like curses that you could choose to take. Like, you don't know what it is, but there's a room that will give you a curse that's like a blessing. It's like your bullets are more powerful, but you're constantly losing hit points over time.
Interesting. All right, so it's essentially a monkey's paw little curse.
Right. Yeah, these little monkey's paws. So they're
and is it completely optional whether you can take it or not, or is it mandatory?
If you come to a room, like I said, if there's a room with the devil in it, and if you know it's going to be one of these mixed blessings, you don't know which one it'll be, but you can roll the dice if you want and take one of these blessing curses, or you could just leave the room.
The blessings.
And if you don't. Yeah, and if you don't want one of those, you can. There's also places you can just buy stuff with the money you've gotten during your run, and that are just flat out benefits from certain guys like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so the perks are like more like things you pick before you go in. You could also unlock more slots for perks. Yeah, maybe you want to focus on the like sub weapons and a lot of good things like that, and eventually. Yeah, you'll find a good loadout that works for you, or if you know that there's certain troubles that you have on a certain set of stages, you could pick perks that help you deal with those. But yeah, it's a nice little system to customize your playstyle.
I feel like this is something, considering everything you said, this seems a lot more approachable to people who are generally averse to roguelikes.
I think so. I think it's distant enough to that genre, even though there is like just a flat out endless mode that you could just play and you go through stage after stage until you die, until whatever. I think just the variety of the stages keeps that fresh, so you won't mind as much, and the different challenges.
And it does seem like there is actual progression going on in between each playthrough. So
yeah, there's those perks that you unlock, and just. And as I mentioned, the collectibles are pretty good, and there's usually a little story. Like some of those collectibles give you the lore of the world, like I said, and that satisfies me. Even if I didn't have a good run, I like making a little bit of progress on those, and it just feels so good to play as this character. Like he just has a lot of style. He moves so cool, and you just feel like such a cool swashbuckler. Like that's the word for it. He just feels very swashbuckling.
Swashbucklery.
Yeah. And so,
you think he could potentially be the next Shovel Knight, or is it? Yeah,
I think that he deserves to be as recognized at that, because this guy has, even though technically it's a face, he does have a little. You can see more emotion with this character, so I feel like there's more character to Flinthook even than Shovel Knight. So I want to know more about him, and I'd love to see him get a little more attention by people. So I am hoping that he becomes more popular, because honestly, I'd be up for like a Flinthook too.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised at how positively you're receiving this game.
Yeah, I'm. It hit all the right notes for me. Good theming.
Yeah, that's true. Pirates are definitely your thing.
and just satisfying, crazy wall jumping, hook swinging gameplay. So
now I do have to ask. I believe there were a couple criticisms with how the control scheme felt. Do you feel like you had any issues with that?
I could see why some people. So just to give you an idea, all right. So you have your basic controls. Your left joystick to move. You shoot the hook with like R2. You use your chrono belt with L2, and you can freeze in place to pivot shoot. Like if you don't want to move, but you want to aim in different directions, you hold down like R1, and it'll kind of anchor you so you could shoot in like a 360 degrees without running. It took a little getting used to. I'll say this much. I forget about the chrono belt half the time. Maybe because of the buttons. I don't know. It's just for me, maybe it's the way it's in the controls, but it's not a big deal. I think the hardest thing to get over is the fact that fighting the bosses is like you get the one shot at them, and if you die, start that whole run over. And it can be frustrating. Granted, the game does not have a ton of bosses as far as I see. I think there might be like 4 or 5 bosses. And so when you get those bounties, but then you can work to unlock the hard modes of all of them, and that takes a lot of currency in the game to unlock. But those are my biggest gripes: getting set back from wanting to fight a boss, which is they're pretty interesting. They're not super hard, and maybe after 2 or 3 tries, you pretty much know how to beat them, but. It still stinks to I gotta go back and play 5 more stages before I even get a shot at him again.
Gotcha. Now, this is a $15 game. Do you think it's worth it for that price?
Totally. For almost anybody. For $15, you're gonna get a lot of play out of it. It's a nice, just game. It's one of those games you could turn on anytime. Oh, and they also have the daily and weekly challenges. So
how cool.
Yeah,
okay.
So you could take on, you get one shot at them. But you can take on the daily challenge, see how far you get, compare to other people on your friends list and stuff, and just, challenge yourself to that. Like I said, one shot at it, and then there's also the weekly one. So
I like that.
I've enjoyed those. Yeah, I like turning on every day and just taking on that daily challenge and seeing how far I go. And if anyone else I knew was playing it right now, I would definitely be looking and trying to beat them.
That's cool. And hopefully people might check this out more now that you've reviewed it this way.
Yes. So, what have you been playing? And it also involves the throwing of objects.
Yeah. So, last week we talked about the Super Mario Tennis Aces, and we all got really hyped about that.
Oh, yeah.
So, I kind of wanted to see if I could explore something on the same vein to maybe scratch that itch. So I played a game called Disc Jam.
Is this a game about dueling DJs?
You know what? I would play that game over this, to be honest. But no, Disc Jam is a Frisbee tennis-style sports game that kind of mixes a bit of a pseudo-futuristic style with an art style kind of similar to Fortnite, if you've seen that.
Okay, yeah,
so
yeah,
it's cartoony, but, it's of that art style. The object of the game is actually pretty simple. You throw your disc to your opponent's side of the court while catching a disc thrown by your opponent. And so you throw the disc back and forth until you can hit the goal at the very end of their screen. So the fundamentals game is pretty standard, and you have a lot of tools at your disposal, like different methods of throws, curves, lobs, that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. The control scheme is pretty straightforward, though there's a lot of caveats to it. So you use the left stick for both movement and aiming. And after you have a disc, you press the Y or B or Z and R buttons for different types of throws. And then that launches the disc to the opponent. They have a little bit of time to react. And once they catch it, they have 1.5 seconds to throw it back a certain way.
Okay, all right.
And then you have 1.5 seconds to throw it back. It's a back and forth from there.
Okay, it has a little bit of a tennis-y kind of feel to it?
Yeah, it's Frisbee tennis. That's like the best way to describe it succinctly. Okay. And there's not that much else to it.
Okay.
So there are a few mechanics that are different from a standard Frisbee tennis style game. You get the standard curves, the lobs, the straightforward throws, but there is a mechanic like a shield where if you hold your shield down and you charge it for a little bit, if you're hit by the disc itself, it charges you up, and that lets you throw back a super attack.
Okay.
And that's like a flaming disc that goes really fast and it's hard to counter. And there's just a bunch of teeny little mechanics here and there that add a lot more gameplay to the entire situation. There's a lot of stuff to consider while you're facing off against your opponent, whether you want to curve to get the disc around away from where their current position is. You want to lob them for punishing bad positioning on their part, or if you want to shoot left and right. Pretty standard tennis stuff.
Are there any different characters that you play as? Or they have different abilities or stats or anything like that?
So there are 6 pre-made characters to choose from, and they each have their own design, which have kind of charming, some wacky, cool aesthetics. And they can be customized with different skins, which are usually just palette swaps in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they really want this to be a straightforward, clean game that you can explore without any stat bonuses or anything. I got a Rocket League style feel from this game.
Okay. So it's always pretty much a flat, even match. No crazy tricks or.
And there are cosmetics that you can try to get, and that's how you would be able to customize your character a bit more.
Okay.
Now, KC.
Okay.
This all sounds well and good, and I was actually pretty hyped to get, a tennis-style game on the Switch. Mm-hmm. But I have so many problems with it. So many problems.
Okay, tell me.
So, for one, this game only has control movements in 8 directions. So up, down, left, right, up, left, that whole situation.
Right, like very rigid. You're either going diagonal, totally right, no in between.
Absolutely. The controls feel so unrefined. It's 2018. We really shouldn't be locked into 8 directions anymore.
Yeah.
Especially with a game that's expecting to move with such precision. It's really awkward to be locked in this way.
Yeah, I could see that.
The problem is, since movement is also tied to the aiming button, aiming is also locked into those 8 directions. So it's really weird feeling that you're not really controlling your character as much.
Yeah, I could see that.
The big problem is that whenever you have a disc, you only have 1.5 seconds to throw it. So you might transition into a move, catching the disc, and then you have such a small window to throw it that you might get penalties, or you might not get the throw that you need. The fact that the window is so small and that there's so little indication that your character caught it means that you might be in the middle of what you're expecting to be a movement, and it actually is the input for your throw, and you throw it in the wrong direction. It's not great. And not only that, aiming is also a bit more difficult because there's painfully minimal indication about where your shot's gonna go. I wanted to shoot to the top left to go on the left side and kind of curve, but the inputs feel so muddy that it doesn't always feel that way. It sometimes inputs it and doesn't quite curve the way I want it to, and that kind of ruins that situation. There's just a lot of different elements to this on the fundamental control aspect that I wasn't a big fan of.
Is there any kind of multiplayer or any have you online or offline?
So yeah, there absolutely is online multiplayer, which I think is good. There weren't that many players in the multiplayer.
Okay, I can imagine that, yeah.
I wanted to get into a bunch of multiplayer games, so I started up searching for players, and from there it was showing that it was searching within the 100 skill rating. Then slowly it switched to the 200 skill rating, then the 500 skill rating, and then from there, like, the margin of people they're searching to match you up with rises so high that the people you're fighting is inherently going to be so strong that you're going to get overwhelmed.
Is it possible they're not that good just because there's nobody else playing? They're only playing like the same really like weak guy
people over and over. Who knows? But it doesn't feel great when you wait a lot of time before you can get a game.
I mean, that kind of stinks. I mean, I can't see what else they could do about that other than have more people buy it. But judging by everything else in the game, it doesn't sound like it's going to be too many crazy people flocking to it. Yeah,
now I do want to have a caveat about the control scheme. Like, once you play the game, you get used to it. You get kind of used to the weird quirks and the way you have to make up for some of the shortcomings. So after a while, I was starting to get into the groove of it. But, the fact that there was so few multiplayer options, I kind of had to fall back into the single-player mode, which is called Ghost Arcade.
Oh, so why do they call it that?
The Ghost Arcade is essentially a way to fight an AI that was supposedly built using real-world player data.
Gotcha. Makes me curious, though. Like, do you feel there's a lot of room for individual style and strategy in the gameplay?
Well, it's about as much strategy as something like tennis would be, There's fundamental gameplay, and there's things that you should do during certain situations otherwise. There are playstyle quirks that you can get into, and I do feel like if you're able to fight back against the kind of muddy control scheme, there is a lot there on a conceptual level that you can strategize. And that's why something like Super Mario Tennis Aces looks exciting because, as much as you're just playing tennis, there are a lot of mechanics that you have to take into consideration. And I think that's exciting, and some of that is in this game. The problem is, Ghost Arcade is kind of the only way you can play solo, and the AI is awful.
Oh, God, okay.
It has ungodly capabilities to catch the weirdest and most extreme shots that you make. But whenever you throw the most simple shots forward, or the most simple curves,
really,
you can just watch the AI just circle around, not knowing what to do, and it's both funny and frustrating because as much as you want to get into the game and and try to play dynamically against the opponent. The fact that the simplest shots almost seem to work every time, makes it not worthwhile doing any other shot.
Kind of reminds me like a lot of games where the AI, like they don't know how to make an AI that's like mediocre for a lot of games. So what they end up doing is just like making it really awesome because that's easy to do. But then it's like, and just make it totally flub like randomly, like every one out of 6 shots, it's just going to do something totally awful.
Yeah, and I can maybe see that they might have been trying to do that with the AI for this, but they overcorrected, and now the simplest shots always work.
Okay.
And that kind of ruins the fun of single player. So the fact that there's slim pickings in multiplayer and the AI for single player isn't great, it's not really encouraging.
Is there local multiplayer?
There is local multiplayer, which is what I was about to mention, and that was actually pretty fun. I was playing with David in local multiplayer, and we were both starting to get the hang of the controls, and that was a fun experience. But overall, as much fun as that was, it didn't really feel compelling to play it and get good at it.
Gotcha.
Since there's just nothing behind it. And this game is really positioning itself to try to be like the next Rocket League or something like that.
All right, so it sounds like it's going to be just kind of a little bit of a forgettable, just a curiosity game.
One thing I want to bring up, though, this game has microtransactions.
Ooh, ouch. Like legitimate pay for something extra.
Yes. Like it would send you straight into the eShop for microtransactions. Now it's purely cosmetic, which is the ones that I prefer.
It's preferable, but still not wanted.
So this is definitely propping itself to be like Rocket League in the sense that they want the game to be sustainable through these cosmetic microtransactions, which is definitely understandable. And if this game had a player base that would justify that microtransaction, I feel like it would be worth it, but ultimately, just avoid it.
Okay.
In the end, despite the game seeming kind of like a hasty cash grab trying to go for that esports style game, I actually feel like the developers were trying to make the game good. And I think the fundamental gameplay is fun. Like, it can be fun. Because when I was playing it multiplayer, it was fun. But everything else around it was not enjoyable, and I think it's a skippable experience, especially for the $15 price tag.
Okay, I was going to ask the price next. All right, so that's Disc Jam. Moving on. Okay, so we had a high, kind of had a little bit of low. I'm going to say this. I love leading with my final thought or opinion. I'm going to go with a mediocre.
Okay.
But a middle ground. An interesting and good game here, though. Mercenaries Saga Chronicles. This is a game I was very interested in for a long time because one of my top 5 games of all time is Final Fantasy Tactics, the original, not Tactics Advanced.
Right.
And this game is unabashedly, totally openly trying to ape that feeling, that gameplay in a lot of ways. It's in fact, the name of like one of the episodes of it sounds like it's totally like bizarro version of it, where the Final Fantasy Tactics was called a subtitle War of the Lions. The first episode of this one is Will of the White Lions. So,
okay,
they're just like
that
kind of
sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. They're going in that direction, and they're pretty decent with their level of hit and miss in this regards.
Okay.
So it's actually 3 games in one. The first, like I said, there's Will of the White Lions, Order of the Silver Eagle, and the Grey Wolves War. Previously, the first one was only on mobile, and the other 2, I don't know if both of them came out even in the West. I know at least one of them has never been ever available here before. So yeah, this is basically Final Fantasy Tactics style game with the same kind of art style, though not quite the same, level of fine, fanciful art that you might know from there. A little simpler, but it's still reminiscent of the art style from Final Fantasy Tactics. It has the same gameplay, so you have your party, and you're going to pick some characters. There's going to be a grid map with different elevations. You could take cover behind things, and there'll be monsters and stuff like that, or other soldiers you have to fight. And your characters, they move on the grid and they have different abilities. Some of the abilities are very almost exactly like those from Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, you might just have a sword ability that, can disarm an enemy, or you might have throw a rock at an enemy, boosts, different job classes that have different, types of spells. Now, the main thing that sold me on Tactics, the core of what it was for me, gameplay-wise, was the job mix and match system. The fact that you could take a character, say he unlocked the ability to become a time mage, train him as a time mage, let him go into a bunch of battles, unlock one cool ability, let's say like a movement ability, like I used to like teaching my main character to be a time mage so you could learn the teleport ability, and that counted as a movement skill. And then change him to a totally different job. I'm like, he's done. He never needs to be a time mage again. I just wanted him to learn how to teleport. So now he could be a samurai. And I would teach him to be a samurai that could teleport behind people and, slice them with his two-handed weapons. And that was a cool combo. This has a little bit of this element where your characters aren't necessarily free to choose any job in the game, though. They go down trees where you might start as, let's say, a squire or something like that, and then after you hit a certain level, they'll branch into one of two routes. So maybe he'll become a knight, or maybe he'll become a mercenary, or this mage become an offensive mage, or maybe a debuff mage, that kind of thing. So it's a little more limited, and there's still the mix and matcher of abilities that you'll gain along the way, but it's missing that total, really cool crafting of a unique squad of soldiers. Because in that game, though, also you needed to have that, because you had to find ways to break the game to beat it. It was so challenging. The challenge is a little less, so you don't need to break the game in order to hold your own. So maybe it's a little easier. It's a little more approachable.
Right, so it seems a bit more accessible to people who might not be as big fans of the genre.
Exactly. I know I'm a very special case. I am someone who is looking for a game like this to grind me to a pulp and force you to use every mechanic to maximum advantage to win with genius strategies or nothing at all.
Indeed, you are a very special case, Casey.
But yeah, I acknowledge that people who might have liked the concept of a tactics game, but not necessarily how much thinking goes into it, will enjoy.
There's so much that goes on in the preparation phase of the tactics games that that's actually somewhat part of what people enjoy about them. Like, being able to prepare your team with such depth is really part of the experience.
Right.
In at least Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, but I feel like this kind of permeates, that's kind of the theme across this. Nothing's quite as complex as a hardcore tactics game, but at the same time, everything just kind of has it's not as beautiful as one of those games. Like, let's go to the plot. The plot line is very straightforward. It's almost cliche there's pretty much a clear good bad guy sort of thing going on, and a little bit of tension in the ranks, or messages about the power being consolidated too much by corrupt nobles, that kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas other games in this had a little more, let's say, I'll go to the other ones. I don't want to only refer to tactics, but let's say Ogre Battle, or Tactics Ogre had a little more nuance in, the gray areas.
Intrigue?
A little more intrigue, some, a little bit more complex plot that, if you're willing to, read it all, is actually something pretty interesting and rewarding. And, had all the different races and cool, creatures you'd meet. Again, this just kind of feels like it's easy to get into. It's easy to digest. You don't if you can ignore the story and still kind of enjoy the game. But again, that's not something personally. I'm not looking for an easy to digest story. I'm looking for something a little more robust and nuanced. But
now, when it comes to accessibility nowadays, Fire Emblem is actually more accessible than ever. How would you rate it compared to something like that?
I'm going to say it's a little different. I mean, are we talking about just storyline-wise, or are we talking about mechanics?
I guess difficulty and mechanics, understanding the mechanics.
Okay. Understanding the mechanics. I think that Fire Emblem is still an easier to understand mechanics because you don't have to customize the characters at all, and you really don't pick too many abilities. Most characters in a Fire Emblem game have like this type of attack, and this kind of like healing spell.
And then you set different skills and stuff that's not necessarily an active skill they take advantage of.
Right. In this, you have a lot of like, things that are doing buffs. You have percentages of certain things doing really powerful abilities. Like the ability to paralyze an enemy could be huge in this game, but maybe it only has a 50% chance of working, and you have to really base your strategy around whether or not this is going to, hit or miss.
Right.
And taking into account the range and friendly fire, all these sort of things do make it, I'd say, a little more complicated than a Fire Emblem, which could be good. And take into account things like height, having a character on top of a house with a bow and arrow, that's like super invincible. Like that's like one of the most dangerous things you could do in one of these games. And knowing to get a guy at a vantage point like that is still pretty rewarding in these kind of games.
Okay, so there is still depth if you want to dig into it.
Yeah, and I think it's really good that you brought up a game like Fire Emblem, because I do think that has become really accessible, and that does set the new standard for accessibility. And so compared to a game like that, this definitely does have a little more depth in terms of the gameplay. I still think Fire Emblem has a much more intriguing storyline, though.
Right. Like, the overall package seems like there's more to it than Mercenaries Saga?
Yeah. I'd say, like, a Fire Emblem definitely is a more elaborate game overall, and presentation-wise and all that sort of stuff, too.
Okay.
Now, there are decisions in the story, too. I guess a little bit like some of these other games, but there are different routes and the different storylines. Nothing that's too crazy, because it's like the Telltale Games syndrome, where they can't have your choices affect like 3 games worth of storyline. But there are some different endings to each of the games, depending on your choices. So that'll take into
there's
effect.
something.
One of the things I'd say, though, I missed from other of these like strategy games is you can't rotate the camera. I used to...
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it kind of kills me, because I would do that all the time, even when I'm not thinking about it. I would just constantly be rotating the camera to like get a different view on it. Like, where will this guy be able to hit him from here?
Right. And when it comes to sprite-based mechanics, I like being able to rotate the camera just because it gives you a different perspective on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Sometimes some graphical assets cover the spacing, and being able to rotate, you can just double-check that.
Yeah. I mean, again, also, the music, it serves a purpose, but again, it's not... I'm never going to listen to a soundtrack of this game, so it's just all okay. It does a purpose, and that's kind of what I feel like with this game. It kind of serves a purpose, and you know what? Honestly, I haven't played a game in this, tactics genre in a very long time, so I do appreciate it, and I do like it for what it is. I can't always compare every game of this genre to these like pinnacle, like I said, it's one of my top games of all time. So I that is a thing I have to be conscious of when I play them. It's still solid, right. But again, I don't think it's going to be a game or a series that is going to overwhelm or wow the populace, I guess, unless you've never played this genre before, in which case I think if you've ever been interested in the genre, this might be a pretty good entry point into it.
Okay, so not even something like Fire Emblem.
Yeah, maybe if you're looking for a step up in terms of the difficulty and, something in the vein of Fire Emblem, you might enjoy this. I don't think, though, that anyone who's like me, who's like very familiar with the genre and really deeply into strategy, tactics games like this, I think we're going to just find it a little bit more lackluster overall.
Right, I understand. I feel like it's attempting to scratch that Final Fantasy Tactics itch.
Absolutely.
Because there are so many graphical assets to this game that look like they were pulled directly from Tactics.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just mechanically not quite as...
It's not mechanically, and you know what, like I said, everything just kind of looks like you took that game and just kind of simplified it. Like, I like the character portraits in this game, but they're still very like bland faces, normal people. No one really stands out, and there were even times where I forgot which character was which by their face. Just like nothing super stands out.
Gotcha. Your face ain't special.
Yeah, honestly. For $15, I mean, it's. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed with it as a $15 eShop title. I think it's good, and like I said, it does a purpose, and it feeds a niche that is severely underrepresented, I feel, these days.
Yeah, there hasn't been a Final Fantasy Tactics game on a Nintendo console since the GBA one, right?
That
Final
is
Fantasy
correct.
Tactics Advance?
They had Advance 2 also, so yeah, I think that's the last...
Oh, maybe the DS then.
Yeah, so maybe the DS for that one. But it's been a long time, and, I still think that the Vita one, I played the remake of War of the Lions on the Vita, and that still holds up as one of my favorite games.
Absolutely it does. I agree.
So it's going against tough competition, but I respect what they did.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And overall, it seems like the gameplay is at least solid. So
solid.
If you're looking for something like this, then this could...
I guess the best way to put it is, nothing is wrong with this game. It is a good game that I just wish was better than good.
Gotcha. So it did not quite meet Casey's incredibly high expectations for a tactics game.
I mean, that's not totally unfair to say. My expectation... Okay. There's a shadow of truth in that joke.
But honestly... based on what you described, I might actually be interested in checking this out, because while I loved Final Fantasy Tactics and I played it to death, I feel like I am ready for something that's just a bit of a step down until a Final Fantasy Tactics proper comes out that I can sink my teeth into.
Fingers crossed. Well, maybe we'll come across that in the news rundown.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, news rundown, and here are your headlines. Nice. So, actually, this is just a funny study. Did you check this out?
Yeah, actually, I did read about this earlier, and it's actually pretty interesting, considering it's kind of a mix between our two previous podcast worlds.
So, yeah, there's a group that's been polling people based on how much they spend on mobile games, and then comparing that to what consoles they play, whether they're mobile gamers, what they call 8th gen console gamers, or Switch owners. And these are not mutually exclusive, so they kind of like broke it down based on, like you can be a Switch owner and a next gen console owner. But overall, Switch gamers tend to be, or people who predominantly call themselves Switch gamers, tend to spend more on mobile games than almost any other category on here. Then, yeah, it looks like they beat them out. Even people who are self-identified as mobile gamers spend less than Switch gamers on mobile games.
That's actually really interesting. Yeah, when I looked at the statistic, it kind of made sense to me. I feel like the Switch as a console really attracts those mobile gamers who would want to spend more for a more fulfilling experience.
Yeah. Most notable, so the people who spend $30 or more, right? So that's the highest end. So that's going to include any whales.
Right.
And Nintendo Switch owners were the only ones that broke 10% spend $30 or more per month on mobile games. It looks like console gamers were just at the 10% mark, and about 6-7% for mobile gamers proper in that realm there. Just it just kind of, I bring this up mostly because we've talked a lot about what Nintendo is competing against and how Nintendo was, people were talking about how we don't need a portable system because mobile gaming is kind of taking over that whole realm and pushing out things like the DS and stuff. So seeing that Switch gamers are still buying games and willing to spend on mobile games means that, to me, that Nintendo has found the audience that they're looking for, that just those who have expendable income and are willing to, play in both genres there.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It really does. So our next headline is actually really interesting to us and relevant to the Nintendo Direct we mentioned previously. So we are now able to confirm that Masahiro Sakurai is directly working on the next Smash Bros. So we don't quite know what role he has in the development of Smash Bros. Switch, but he was able to confirm on Twitter that he has been working on the game in silence every day, and that more information will be coming soon if fans are patient.
Mm-hmm. If fans are patient. So wait, if we get all uppity and start tweeting him and saying, "Tell us more about Smash," is he gonna withhold information?
You know what? I would not put it past Sakurai.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it past him. He's a very quirky personality. Now, this is actually kind of interesting because I know him working on Brawl and even Smash 4 was a little, a bit of a detriment to his health. He's a very intense person when it comes to the development and lead development position. So we've always been thinking over the past few iterations that this was going to be his last Smash. Brawl was going to be his last Smash. Smash 4 was going to be his last Smash. But no, he's part of 5.
So maybe he's taking a less leader role. Was he? He was the director in the previous ones.
Well, yes, he was. Which is, I believe that was his position. That's kind of how he wanted to proceed. It was a situation where Smash has become his baby, and despite how much effort he's put into it in the past and how stressful it was for him, he didn't want to see it in other people's hands.
It's possible he's taking advice, trying to pass the torch. Maybe he's just
right. He did state that in future entries of Smash Bros. That he might want to move on to just a consulting role.
Yeah, it's possible.
But we know that he's in it for this one.
Very cool, very cool.
So speaking of which, it seems Game Maker Studio 2 is coming to the Nintendo Switch. We mentioned previously that a game made in Game Maker Studio, like Undertale, was very unlikely to come in because of that lack of support.
So now we know why that was able to be announced, because this has probably been, in the works for some time.
Absolutely. It's really great that the Nintendo Switch is able to accommodate something like Game Maker Studio, because, there are a bunch of cool games that was made on that platform, and Undertale being the biggest one that we can think about. So that's exciting news.
Yeah, just, more, making it easier for more games to come over. It's always led to something, a new wave of interesting stuff.
Absolutely, and I'm really excited to see that Nintendo is pushing for making it easy for third-party developers to come to their platform.
Yeah, I mean,
that's something that I'm so glad that they're focusing on this generation.
Always, I think that's, if I had to pick a theme for the year, this is the year of the third party. This is where Nintendo really has to make that push, and we're seeing efforts in this regard. So let's see. Let's see how the theme holds up.
I am optimistic that Nintendo's going to kick butt this year.
All right.
With that.
So today I actually had a fun thing. I had a little bit of a scoop, if I may toot my own horn slightly.
Slight tooting?
A little bit. It's not like I broke
toot.
like the new Smash Brothers coming out before it was announced. But
yeah,
our friends over at Chucklefish, and I think that they've had a really good rapport in our community, and we've been personally excited about a lot of their games. And one of those such games was going under the project, under the name Project Spellbound. Yeah. And just today they announced that game. So this is like the Harry Potter meets Stardew Valley type game.
Right.
And they announced the new name for it today, and they showed off that it's going to be officially called Witchbrook. And I was excited, and I posted about this on Facebook and our Twitter feed, and a couple people asked me, "Oh, well, is this actually coming to Switch though?" And I was like, "Oh, you know what? I forgot if that's even a thing. I assumed it was, but they never actually said that." So I instantly just went over to our Jay Bayless, who was on our show a while back in one of those episodes there, and I asked him if he can confirm whether or not this actually was supposed to be coming to Switch. And he said, "Hold on, let me talk to my boss." And he came back to me a couple minutes later. He was just like, "Say, actually, we have an official statement." And he's told us that our official stance is that all of our future games are planned to be coming to the Switch, and that includes Witchbrook. So I'm just happy to be. So I was like, I instantly turned that into a quote. I tweeted about it, and I feel like I think I actually was the first person to announce that on the internet, that this is coming to the Switch.
Yeah, we're legit now, Casey.
I felt very reportery, and it's just great that we have access to these people. And I'm excited because, we saw that not only is this game going to be coming to Switch, but you noticed that they announced a few other games that we might be interested in. Did you see this other one, though, Starmancer?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks awesome. And it looks so up my alley, to be honest.
Oh, yeah? They called it inspired by Dwarf Fortress, and I've only seen that. I've never actually played that, but I've heard crazy things about Dwarf Fortress.
It is a space station simulator, and you get to actually customize the layout of the space station itself. And based on the trailer, it looks like there's a lot of customization. There's a lot of setup where you're controlling the characters almost Sims style.
Okay. If it's anything like Dwarf Fortress, I imagine that after you'd have like a certain amount of time of building and customizing your space station, there's just going to be an endless wave of like invaders.
Yes, right. Yes, there is a survival mode where you build your station, you start preparing your people, and then you have to start defending against invaders. And looking at the Starmancer trailer, it looks pretty intense by the end of it. I'm really pumped for this.
Very cool. Very cool. So, yeah, looking forward to that and whatever else they might be bringing up.
Absolutely.
And also what's coming up. So this is really more of a setup than anything, but pre-orders are now available for the Pearl and Marina amiibo, which will be arriving July 13th. And
very cool.
And I only mention this because JV and I had a funny, stupid conversation today about something we wanted to do with amiibo.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were always playing the chess games and stuff like that. And JV said, no, I can't play chess. There's no giant robots. And so I showed him a set of Gundam chess pieces. And he said, okay, those I'd bet into. And then today he just said, why don't we have, something with the amiibo? Being able to make a custom chess set out of them, as opposed to, because there's all these other games that have, the boxes you can buy with a random chess piece character, like that, a Kingdom Hearts 1 and all these other games. But what if they just sold bases that the amiibo can click into, and you can make your own custom amiibo chess sets? You could have your rooks be Pearl and Marina. You can have a Mario and Luigi pair of bishops, or make them kings and queens, and just all this sort of thing, and just sell these little bases that click into the amiibo. Or we could 3D print them, I'm sure, somehow. Someone could invent 3D printing, and just I would love to make a customized chess set based out of amiibo like that, and just mix and match the characters I want for each piece.
Yeah, I was looking, and this idea, the concept of using amiibos as chess pieces is not unique. But I would really love to have those clicking bases so that you can actually see what piece each amiibo represents.
Right, exactly.
I feel like it should be a thing, Casey. I feel like
think
it
so
should
too.
really
It's
be a
stupid
thing.
sounding, but I think it's easy enough that someone can make it happen.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyway, on to the updates. Switch System Update 5.0.0 is live, and it has a whole bunch of little cute features to it. One of the most notable, actually, was funny that your Switch now knows the color of your Pro Controller when it's connected.
Yeah, isn't that fancy?
Yeah, so when you see those little icons showing you which ones, it'll know if you have the Xenoblade one, and it'll show you the colors of it on there.
Oh, that's a game changer there. Oh, that's a big deal.
You can now add friends through Facebook and Twitter, or find them through suggestions.
Apparently, there's even more icons based on ARMS and Kirby series, which is pretty cool for your profile.
I'm going to look around. I'm actually just going to check my friends list and see who's using them. Because I'm pretty happy with my my Me avatar, but...
Yeah, I agree. Same here. I feel like my Me avatars really encompasses me pretty well, so I might not switch to that, but it's cool to have options.
Yeah, and actually someone actually found a weird little trick if you want to check your Twitter feed on your Switch, if that's a priority for you for some reason. There actually is a stupid little trick you can use. I'll link to it if you're curious. To check your Twitter feed on your Switch now using this update.
And I believe you can do the same with Facebook. Someone actually posted a video of them going to the SwitchCast Facebook group on their Switch, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Okay, yes. And Zen Studios announced a patch for Pinball FX3, where they went back and forth actually on this, saying that they were going to make a patch for it, and then they said they weren't, or they canceled it, and now it seems like people have been pestering them enough, and they're going forward with this update to add 60 frames per second in handheld mode and up the graphics to 1080p in docked mode for all tables across the board.
That's actually pretty awesome. I'm really glad that they're listening to the community who's interested in this, because the Nintendo Switch is a really big platform for Zen Studios, and I feel like they're a good company that would do something like this. So yeah. I'm glad they followed through.
All right, what are the new releases this week, JV?
Yeah, so starting today, March 15th, we're getting Cluster Truck, The Long Reach, Bing for Nintendo Switch, Neon Wall, World Neverland Elmia Kingdom, Neo Geo Aero Fighters 3, Enchanting Mahjong Match. Oh, that sounds fun. I bet my grandma would love that. Gem Smashers, and Sparkle 3 Genesis. On March 16th, we're getting Kirby Star Allies. Woo! Tesla versus Lovecraft, which we talked about and seemed pretty interesting. Last day of June. On March 20th, we're getting Attack on Titan 2, Swim Out, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. 21st of March, we're getting Blade Strangers.
Yeah.
Which is that weird, interesting fighting game that had the Coda Princess and Cave Story characters. Right?
All the Nicholas properties.
Yes, the Nicholas properties.
Yeah.
And Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja. I feel like the Dragon Ninja would win against those bad dudes.
They're pretty bad dudes, if they're bad enough to save the president.
We'll see.
Down the pipe, we have a bunch of interesting announcements or games that don't necessarily have a release date yet. The Adventures of Bertram Fiddle. It's a pretty funny-looking British point-and-click adventure with some dark humor and pretty cartoony style. That's coming out March 29th in Japan, so we should expect a release date pretty soon for that. Desert Child. It's a hover bike racing RPG. Figure that one out.
Which is a really strange combination, but you know.
Yeah, no release date for that yet. A physical release for Thimbleweed Park is coming March 30th. Super Chariot. Oh, this is coming in May with a demo coming soon. This is a fun little co-op game, actually, with two players are pulling this cart through a series of dungeons and stuff, and you have to work together to launch each other to up places so you could pull it up. You have to defend the cart together, and it's a little bit of a physics puzzler as you pull this thing through the stages, but requiring teamwork. So it's a little bit like Snipper Clipsy in that regards.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, so another one of the Game Maker Studio, two games to reference, a pair of games actually, Super Hydorag and Cursed Castelia EX. These are basically kind of like, I would say, homage / clones of some old school games. One of those basically, Super Hydora is a Gradius, shoot 'em up style game. Looks very much like that.
Yeah, Super Hydora.
Yeah, and Cursed Castelia EX is a Ghosts and Goblins type game, but it's a slightly different game, not as horror based.
So it does look like it was intentionally built to reference those classic games.
Yeah, no, totally up those alleys. Yeah. Next we have Sally's Law. This is a sweet game. It's an interesting puzzle game where you play this rolling ball, but you kind of play through it twice because it's a weird puzzle game that incorporates a story, because as you play through it the first time as Sally, and you solve puzzles rolling around these stages, you find out the sad story of her terminal father. Her terminal father, who was helping her. Like, she's under the impression she's on some charmed life, and once you beat the game, you play it again as her father, and you play all these things that happen behind the scenes that made your first run through the game possible.
That's actually a super cool concept.
Yeah, I've never thought of a way like that to incorporate the story into the gameplay in such a little clever way like that. That's cute.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect something from such a simplistic looking game.
And it's a beautiful soundtrack, too, that I'm going to be including. That will be the transition that you listened to earlier. Awesome. The Flame in the Flood is getting a physical release, though we don't know exactly when. V-Rally 4 is coming in September. That is a rally racing game. Another racing game, and another not horrible looking kart style racer, All-Star Fruit Racing.
Oh, yeah. So I gotta say, Casey, this is probably the next Mario Kart killer.
I'm not going that far, but it's just along the lines of it doesn't look like it's a super cheaply made type of kart racer. So it could be something, and it has 4-player split screen multiplayer, which is a nice feature that some people like on these games.
Yeah.
We got Yonder, the Cloudcatcher Chronicles, which is coming soon.
PM.
Yes. This is, I think that's the 3D one that it's kind of like Stardew Valley-ish, very exploration-based, but in a 3D setting.
Right.
Atari. So this is funny. I was literally just talking about this last night, and I was curious because we have all these retro remakes of our classic old NES games and stuff. And I was literally saying just last night, it's funny. I've never seen an Atari game on the eShop for $1 or something like that. Why didn't any of those really old ones? Atari has now announced the Flashbacks Classics coming out this year. Right now, there's 2 volumes of them planned, with 50 games each, 50 Atari games into each one of these ones, and a 3rd volume possibly coming. I guess depends on how well these are received. We should be getting more information on them in GDC, which is coming up quite soon.
Right.
Hazelnut Bastille. This is a SNES style. I want to say it's kind of like a Zelda / Secret of Mana type game, little RPG there. But it actually has the composer from Secret of Mana in there. And just listening to the trailer to it, I can totally hear Secret of Mana soundtrack in
the
there.
Inspiration. You can definitely see how it was inspired by that.
Planet Alpha, a sci-fi platformer game without a date yet. Cyvariar Restoration, which is another shmup that'll be coming this year. And Tennis World Tour, May 22nd, in case anyone thought Mario Tennis was a little too cartoony, or you want a serious tennis game, you want something to play with actual tennis players and human beings, there you go. Here's your option.
I kind of want my racket to break when I play tennis, though.
Well, if you get angry enough.
It's fair. Touche.
And coming in spring, there's a couple of fun games. Another World, which is one of those classic, it's been out, re-released 100 times. It's a side-scroller, a little bit puzzly platformer type game. Where you just replay scenes until you find the way that doesn't kill you. Framed is a fun mobile game I actually played. It's a game where you see comic strip type windows, and the way you solve the puzzles or get through things is by rearranging them and making the story play out in a different way based on how you arrange the comic strip tiles. And
gotcha.
And it's about you being framed, and not only about you moving the frames of a comic. So anyway, Semblance, a weird, little interesting puzzle platformer game. Again, this is one where you're a piece of goo and the world's made out of Play-Doh, and you're going to be bending the world and bending your shape to get through problems. And Seashore, okay, this is actually interesting, but this is a Metroidvania style game that is only co-op. You can. They have been playing this up as a game where you have to play with 2 players. One person's a gunner, and one person is this swordswoman, and you not only do battle, together and compensate for each other's weaknesses and strengths with your different weapons, but you have to work together to overcome obstacles and puzzles.
That seems pretty cool. Yeah, I dig the concept of kind of pushing for the co-op experience.
And they said they made it on Switch because if you're going to make a game that has to be played 2-player, put it on the Switch where,
there's guaranteed 2 controllers. Yeah.
All right, that's everything in the news. Let's go into the Community Pulse and wrap this show up. All right, so in the community polls, we have to read off, let's read off a couple of the winners, actually. Sun Worshippers Contest. Do you want to remind people what the contest was?
So Sun Worshippers Contest was that he wanted us all to submit what our favorite Nintendo or non-Nintendo franchises are, or our favorite characters. And there was a lot of entries and a lot of participation for this.
Yes, about 80 in total.
And I'm excited to look through and read some of the more interesting ones to you guys.
Okay, so he picked one winner from the Twitter applicants, one from Facebook, and one from Discord. And those winners are Llama Libre on Twitter. We have on Facebook Jay Folland. And from Discord, Ard Wolf and Scott the Geek. I guess he picked two there because that's where half the applications came from.
Oh, yeah.
So which ones do you feel like reading?
I'll start with Ardwolf.
Okay.
So he said, one of my favorite Switch games so far is Stardew Valley. I hadn't played it before on any other platform, so my first time was on the Switch. I was resistant at first, having played farming simulators before. I was wary that it would feel like The Sims, where things get increasingly complicated, and I would feel compelled to try and fit more and more into a day. Quite the opposite.
Metroid Man appropriately wrote, my favorite Nintendo game is Super Metroid. I love the eerie atmosphere, the attention to detail, the art and music, and the, mostly for the time, non-linear gameplay. Being able to collect power-ups that unlock areas is really conspicuous way to guide gameplay while still giving the player a feeling of choosing their path. He actually wrote a lot more than that, but I will stop there for the sake of this. But yes, Metroid, honestly, that's why a lot of people are really waiting for that to be the next one of the next real killer titles to hit the Switch.
I'm actually personally excited for it myself. Mm-hmm. Now, Froteet said, and I actually think this is a pretty interesting answer. So Froteet said, my favorite Nintendo character is Captain Olimar.
Good
Not
choice.
because I can... not because I can relate to him or anything like that, but I think he's one of Nintendo's most fleshed out character. He's got a good paying job as pretty much an interstellar trucker, has a wife and kids, and his only goal is to get home to them by any means necessary.
Oh, all right.
Captain Olimar is not only an astronaut the size of a quarter, but he's also a family man, and I love him for it.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I like that answer. I'd never really thought of Captain Olimar as being a character worthy of being someone's favorite, but the way you framed that answer, I'm totally in. I'm totally down for some Olimar.
I think an appropriate one to read would be Llama Libres. Although it's not my favorite Nintendo game, I have a lot of love for the Smash Brothers franchise because it opened my eyes up to a lot of the different franchises and characters out there. I've slowly been trying to play every game that a mainline Smash character has been in, and it has been a journey. Still, haven't gotten around to some of the popular ones, but it's a nice little personal goal of mine. I've had a lot of fun exploring these new games, and it makes me love Nintendo just that much more because of it. I just think that's a great fitting one for this, because a lot of people played Smash because they liked, or a character they liked was in it, and that they wanted to follow them, like see them in a different kind of context. You know, maybe you were a Peach fan or something like that, or a Ganondorf fan, and you wanted to play because they're in it, but then you get kind of compelled, like, who's this Roy and Marth guy? Who's Ness? What are these games that I've never even heard of? And then you kind of find the others through that, and I just think that's a great conduit to explore other games.
I think it's really good that you can take away from Super Smash Bros. A bunch more genres that you can look into. It is a pastiche of all that is Nintendo, and it's a great way to explore new franchises.
All right.
Like, I mean, you load up Super Smash Bros. And you're like, hey, who's this Mario guy? Who's this Link guy?
Right, never heard
just,
of that.
You know, a bunch of really good games to explore.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you everybody who applied or entered the contest, and thank you again, Sun Worshipper, for running it. I think a great way to end today's episode is to have our system switch focus on franchises, or rather our personal favorite franchises that we would like to see come to Switch that have not come over yet. I just think this is actually a good point for us both to say the one answer that I feel like we've mentioned maybe 100 times before, but maybe not officially in this system switch. So just kind of want to get it out of the way, our most obvious ones. And for me, everyone who knows or talked to me knows that it's definitely the Suikoden series. And I'm still a big fan of it, and I play it over. It's one of those RPGs I play like at least once every couple of years in some form or another. And I just feel that, without going too much, I've talked about the games themselves a lot, so I won't bore you guys with any more of those details, but I'll say that the series feels incomplete because they were building up to something. Like, all the games took place in different parts of the world, and they all kind of added to one large, consistent timeline, even though it never starred the same characters. Different characters were in each one of them, 108 characters to be exact. They were building up to something with it, and I don't think that it's hit that point. They haven't actually completed the story of the Suikoden world, or the multiverse that actually is in there, and I'd like to see it at least go there. And if someone could just rekindle it over there in Konami and maybe just bring that finale, I'd be happy with that. I'd be over the moon if they just kind of closed it out. If not, I'll take the Card Stories game that came out on GBA, which was based on the physical CCG that I painstakingly translated many years ago.
Nice. Okay, sure. That's kind of awesome.
And for you?
You'll never see it coming. It's Persona. Persona is one of my favorite franchises of all time. When it first came to America and got popularity with Persona 3, I was kind of skeptical because it looked like a little bit of a dating sim mixed with an RPG, and that didn't seem to interest me. But once I picked it up, once I got into the franchise, and once it actually spread from Persona 3 to Persona 4 to Persona 5, and was consistently good, I really feel like this is something that should come to the Nintendo Switch.
Awesome.
What really convinced me most that the Persona series should come to our platform is the fact that it isn't really a technically expansive or technically demanding game. The Persona 5, the last one that came out, was released on the PS3, and I feel like if that's the case, the next one could probably come to the Switch.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think that is our show for the day, isn't it?
And until next time,
switch it up. Thanks for listening. You can support the SwitchCast by visiting us at patreon.com/theswitchcast and join the review crew by rating us and subscribing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Also check out our Discord chat where we have an enthusiastic bunch of Switch fans in a family-friendly environment. Also join our Facebook group for daily discussion and quite a bit of activity towards the Switch itself.
You can also contact us directly via email at kc@theswitchcast.com and jv@theswitchcast.com. Talk to us on Twitter @theswitchcast.
Thank you, HeatleyBros, for the theme music. And check us out on our website at theswitchcast.com, where we will post all relevant links and show notes.
Promotional considerations provided by publishers in the form of review copies of games.
Do 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 do. Gotta eat them Doritos. Do 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 do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, we disconnected for a bit.